Yeah. So yesterday we went through a few things, which is what exactly is the hypothesis. Just to just to actually repeat the thing. Most important aspect of whatever that we are going to attend in Viva is inside your methodology. Okay, 90% of your questions comes inside methodology. First thing, hypothesis is the statement that you are actually trying to prove. So it could be more than one, and it is there in your actually the methodology section as H0, H1, H2, H3, etc. Right? So those are the exact statements that you are trying to prove. Right? Taking yesterday's example, we were talking about whether self-esteem is correlated with the body image, whether self-esteem is correlated with the food, etc. So those are the exact hypothesis statements. So null hypothesis is the one which is going to be the universally accepted statement. So basically, null hypothesis is the one, if you actually fail as well, that is going to remain true. So if your project is successful, the point that you are trying to prove is the alternate hypothesis. Basically, you are rejecting the universally accepted truth and establishing new form of truth. Okay, so that is called as alternate hypothesis. Okay, and the other aspects which are there in your methodology, objective, why exactly you're doing. Okay, what are the tools that you are using? Tools is nothing but the scales that you are using, right? How exactly you are going to measure uh, the uh, uh, the overall self-esteem, or how you are going to measure somebody's body image. So these are the tools or the scales that are being used. So even the names of tools will be there in your methodology section. So point to underline again and again in your entire project report. Methodology is the most important section, and 90% of your questions, even more than 90% of your questions, are going to come under the methodology section. So make sure that 2-3 pages of methodology section is properly read through. Okay. So scales is another aspect that we talked about yesterday. I'm just trying to repeat some of the contents that we went through yesterday, so that we set the stage for the next set of questions, right? And these are the most important questions that are going to come. Next, in your the thing, variables. What exactly are the variables? So yesterday we went through the list of variables based on the example project name that we have actually taken, which is like self-esteem is one variable, and the other variables are like body image and food habits. So so basically these are the variables, and in that, most important aspect is what is dependent variable, what is independent variable. What is the variable that you are actually saying that is being affected? That is dependent variable. The variables which you think are relatively independent, they are not the ones which are getting affected, they are the ones which are affecting the other variable, are the independent variables, right? So those are the two types of variables which will be there in your report, project report as well, right? So next, what exactly are like, yeah, so are the statistical algorithm. So we talked about there are three possibilities of the statistical algorithms. Algorithm one, correlation. So when you are comparing two variables, you would have used correlation. When you are actually trying to compare two groups, okay, so whether group one is same as group two. So typically how it happens is, let's say you have a in the same research statement, you have a situation where you have one group which is having high body image, second group has low body image, and then you are actually trying to check what is their self-esteem of group 1, self-esteem of group 2, and then you are comparing these two groups, then t-test will come into picture. There are two types of t-test. One is paired t-test and other is normal t-test. In case of paired t-test, we are talking about comparing same group but before taking the medication, after taking the medication type. So that is called as a paired t-test. Okay. If you are comparing two different groups and saying that yes, this whether this group and this group are same or different, then it is a normal t-test. If you are actually comparing and taking the same group before doing something and after doing something, and then comparing the results, then it is a paired t-test. Okay, so most of us would have done normal t-test, not the paired t-test, because in case of paired t-test, the situation would be like you will actually take the survey first and then ask the crowd or train the crowd on something else. And then once the training is over, again you will take the survey and just check the result. You will compare the result, the survey that you took before the before your training, and you will compare the survey after the training, and then do a t-test and then check. So I don't think we would have so much of time, etc., to choose such a project. So most of us would have done normal t-test where we would have tried to compare two different groups. Okay, group 1 and group 2. So by comparing two groups, what you are achieving? If I am comparing group 1, which is of high body high body image, with group 2, which is of low body image, and then saying that self-esteem between these two groups are different, then I'm trying to, then I'm proving that body image has got something to do with the self-esteem. Instead, if I prove that these two groups are not different as far as self-esteem is concerned, then I am saying body image doesn't have any role to play, right? So that's how t-test is being used. The next is regression, the third one. So regression will come into picture when you are trying to find the relationship. So it would actually say that how much of Y, which is self-esteem, would be affected if X is changed. So basically you can predict Y based on X value, which is a little more different from correlation and the t-test where you are trying to do the prediction. So it is regression is generally used in artificial intelligence kind of a stage where you give me X value, based on that I will predict Y value. Okay, if somebody says that 1.5 is my body image score, I will be able to use that 1.5 in the equation and say that your self-esteem would be like 2.25, something like that. So I should be able to predict Y based on X. So in the process of finding the equation, regression equation, you will end up finding regression coefficient. Regression coefficient is nothing but that multiplication factor that would be that you would really require on X to predict Y, right? Based on how strong this multiplication factor is, you are telling whether X is going to affect Y or not. That is how regression equation would have been used. Okay, so these are the three types of algorithms: Pearson correlation, the second one is t-test, the third one is regression. Based on your hypothesis, you would have used one of these three algorithms. Okay, so now comes to your general findings, right? So in your findings, apart from these three, you would have also done descriptive analysis. So descriptive analysis would have used simple statistics like mean, median, etc., where you would have used that methodology to describe your sample. Basically, you are saying that I have 30 female, 30 male, and in that average of male is this much, average of female is this much. We would have put a lot of graphs describing your sample. So it is just describing your sample. Okay, it is not it is not finding anything out of it. T-test and other tests are the ones which are finding conclusion of your hypothesis. Rest descriptive analysis is only describing things, just telling that this is how my sample looks and this is how the data looks, kind of a thing. Okay. So, these are the things that we have discussed in detail yesterday. Okay. So now coming to the rest of the parts, rest of the questions. Okay. See, the first thing is there is a question on what is research design. Okay. So whatever you have in your entire methodology section, research design is nothing but it's a total your plan on how you are going to do the research. Okay. So which includes how you are going to take the sampling, what are the techniques that you are going to use to collect the data. Okay, how exactly, what are the techniques that you are going to use from the statistics point of view. Okay, so entire methodology section that we talked about is nothing but your research design. Okay, so theoretically speaking, there are multiple types of research designs which are possible. Okay, so in that, like descriptive, I mean, just to give you a uh, the types of research design, right? Descriptive design is one of the type where your research is done based on the case study. Okay, so a correlation research design where, so basically what you are saying in descriptive thing is I'm going to study somebody and write my research report. So you are not really doing any survey, you are not doing any the measurement and all those stuff. Okay, so you are just going to do a case study observation and then write all your observations and do a research. So that is descriptive. Okay, so similarly, there is something like a correlation study where you are actually trying to take two groups. You are going to make the observation between these two groups. Okay, you can use something like a case and control kind of a study, and you make a correlation type of research design. Okay, so note this is different from statistical technique of correlation. Okay, so we are talking about research design, which is like overall methodology that you use for your entire research. So in our case, we would have used quantitative research design. So basically the entire research design is based on few statistical algorithm. Okay, so we would have actually collected we would have used survey as the technique to collect, and then on top of the survey we would have used statistics. Okay, so so we would have used quantitative in most of our cases. So very unlikely that we wouldn't have used quantitative data or use some other technique. Okay, so survey, we use survey as a technique, and then on top of it, we would have used quantitative statistical technique to actually determine the results. Okay, so most of the projects would have used the same. Okay, so apart from your so we talked about variables, we talked about the sample. So the other thing that we also talked about is sample size. Yesterday we told that more in as a thumb rule, we would have asked at least 60 as the sample size in most of the cases. Why? Because any sample which falls under 30, for example, you are comparing two groups, I need at least 30 in group 1, 30 in group 2 to qualify my test as a parametric test. Okay. So now the question is, what is parametric test? What is a non-parametric test, right? Any test which uses so there are multiple criterias, right, to determine whether it is a parametric test or a non-parametric test. As a thumb rule, the parametric test is the most reliable form of test. Non-parametric test will come into picture only when you don't have a choice. Whether you don't have a choice because of number of reasons. Reason number one, you don't have a choice that you can't get samples at least 30 people. You can't get, let's say, there is no chance. Your research is such that you can't really gather data for 30 people, let's say. Then you don't have a choice. It will fall under non-parametric test, right? So, so I ideally you don't want your test to be falling under non-parametric test because it is less reliable form when compared to parametric test. Also, let's say you have a you don't have a quantitative data, you have a qualitative data like labels or rank or something like that. Then also it would fall under non-parametric test. And you have a variables which are not okay, not normally distributed table, right? You don't have a normal distribution. Then also it will fall under non-parametric test. What is normal distribution? You remember there is a bell curve, right? Most of the data really falls under this bell curve where the extremes, left extreme people are very, very less. Okay, like that it will go increase and it will peak it will actually peak at the middle and then again taper down, and again right extreme people would be like very, very, very rare, and everybody really falls under that medium range. Okay, so this is called as normal distribution. When you actually put that curve, it is the ulta bell curve that would be there. Okay, so if your data or variables are falling under this normal distribution, then it can be parametric test. The moment it is not fitting under normal distribution, then it will again go for non-parametric test. Most of our data would fit into normal distribution. Very unlikely that any one of us would have picked the data which doesn't fit into normal distribution. Okay, so that is why most of our projects would be a parametric test would have used, and all the variables are normally distributed. We would have collected samples more than 30 so that it falls under parametric tests. Okay, so I'm talking about more than 95% of the projects falling under the same. In case if it is not falling, then you will definitely have a statement in your methodology section. Okay, methodology section typically doesn't have more than 2-3 pages of your the content. So word to word go through the methodology section. This is the most important section. Word to word you need to understand methodology section, which has research problem, objectives, variables, hypothesis, definitions of your variables, what is the sampling technique that you are using, what is the inclusion criteria, what is exclusion criteria. So what is inclusion criteria? Basically, what is your boundary of your the entire research, right? Exclusion criteria, what exactly you're not studying. For example, you are saying that I'm not going to study kids, I'm going to study only from this age group to this age group. Let's say I'm not going to collect data in villages or a rural scenario. So you're going to put it into the exclusion criteria. So what exactly you're not going to study, what you are excluding in the overall thing, right? Most of our cases, we would have excluded people who don't know English because questionnaire would be English. Then you would have excluded the people who don't know the English because you can't do the statistical analysis on that particular data because you don't have a questionnaire, right? So this is one common exclusion criteria that most of us will have. We would have excluded people who can't understand English and answer our questions. Okay, so similarly, just see your exclusion criteria, exactly what you have excluded. Okay, and tools, what are the questionnaires that you have used? statistical technique that you have used, whether t-test, correlation test, or the other one. Okay, so your methodology section is the most important part. Go through again and again on that. So in your so so these are the things. If you see most of the sample questions also, everything falls under this methodology section only. Your introduction, your rest of the review of the literature, etc., etc., there might be one question here and there, but it is very unlikely that they would ask anything in depth in those particular areas. Okay, so even if they ask, if you actually tell whatever that you actually feel, there are very less chances that the guy who is asking the question would be able to validate what you are saying. Okay, because introduction is something that is completely a free flowing test which would have picked up anything and everything from the internet and wrote. Okay, so very unlikely that the guy who is asking would actually exactly know the statements in terms of what exactly internet is saying, right? So don't worry about the rest of the project report, but very carefully read the rest of the the methodology section of it. Okay, so few other questions. So when we have done the entire uh, thing, right? So we would have done introduction, which is a free flowing text. We would have done review of literature, which is nothing but research papers. Okay, so when we are doing the research papers, we would have actually collected the reference of these research papers in something called as a APA format. Okay, this is the format in which we would have done the citations. Okay, so APA format is nothing but it is like address of the paper, which talks about how exactly the who are the authors of the paper, how they have actually where exactly they have published their research, in what year they have published. So there is a specific format and the order in which you write. Okay, so this is generally accepted format in research papers when you are referring something which is done as a research by somebody else. Okay, this is the format that we would have included in the references section. So if somebody asks what is citation, so this is nothing but address, rather a reference to the research paper that you have reviewed. So review of the literature is the place which we would have added all our research papers, whatever that we went through. Okay, and these research papers address as a citation, we would have actually sequenced this based on the alphabets. So it is in the ascending order that we would have kept. And these citations are the ones which we refer it in the APA format. Okay. So this is the
So, Praveen, do we need to remember even those references, or it's there in the copy? So it's okay, because if they ask one or two, should we remember?
To remember
no
and
need,
use.
absolutely no need. You don't
Okay.
really have to remember the exact paper name and all those stuff. Okay. So it is very, very unlikely that they will ask what is this particular paper. They will not expect you to remember those particular papers as well. Okay.
So then
So
there was nothing to do, right? I mean, just read through. That's it. Like review.
yeah, so they would just ask where exactly they might really ask you, how did you collect these research papers? Okay. So we would have used Shodhganga, we would have used Google Scholars, etc., etc. You can say that I have searched using these variable names and I found this particular thing in so and so site. Went through the conclusion with that particular paper and I have actually segregated the conclusion, etc. Right. So it is very unlikely, very, very, very unlikely that they will ask you which paper is this. So even if they ask that question, you can just say, can I see the project report once, and then say, and then you should be able to tell what is the extract of it. Okay, so don't worry about trying to mug up any of those particular things as far as those papers are concerned. You don't really have to. You just understand how exactly you have done that. That is enough. Okay. So, but they might ask, okay, how did you collect? How did you collect citation? What is the citation? Where exactly you have included the citation? In the references section, you would have included. So those kind of questions they might ask, but they will not ask what is the content. Okay. And other aspect which they will ask is rationale of study. Why did you do this project? What is that interesting aspect that made you to do this particular research? So that is again a free-flowing test that most of us would have written. So do remember what exactly is the rationale of your study. Okay. So how exactly results are interpreted, right? We discussed depending on the statistical algorithm, like for example, if it is a correlation that we would have used, your correlation coefficient would be from -1 to 1. So if it is closer to 1, then it is a strong relationship that there would be. If it is closer to 0, then the relationship actually gets weakened. So based on the place that, based on your correlation coefficient, if it is zero 0.8, then we would have told strong correlation between these two variables. Okay. If it is close to 0, which is 0.1, 0.2 kind of a thing, we would have told very, very, very weak correlation between these two variables. That's how we would have concluded. So depending on your correlation strength, that is, if it is closer to 0, then weak. If it is closer to 1, it is strong. Okay, so if it is 0.5, it would be medium. We would have concluded based on the correlation coefficient for the correlation related statistical technique, right? We would have also told whether it is positive correlation or negative correlation. If it is -1, then strongly negatively correlated. +1, positively strongly correlated. Okay, something like that. If you have used t-test based on the t-value, okay, and degree of freedom. So degree of freedom is nothing but your sample size, -1. Okay, if it is 60 people, then 60 minus 1 is your degree of freedom. So you go to t-table and verify your t-value, what is the threshold of it. So if your t-value is less than whatever that is there in your t-table, then there is a significant difference that you have. Okay, if it is more, then you don't have significant difference. So other way to do it is check what is the p-value. So using p-value, you can arrive at p-value. Okay, so if your p-value is less than 0.05, that is confidence level, that is significance level, then the difference is significant. If p-value is more than 0.05, then it is not significant. So when we are saying not significant difference between group 1 and group 2, right? So that is how you would have proved your alternate hypothesis, or you would have concluded saying that there is no way that I can prove alternate hypothesis. That means I don't have sufficient data to reject the null hypothesis. That's how you would have concluded in case of t-test. So similarly for regression, based on your strength of your regression coefficient, you would have actually told that yes, X is having a lot of effect on Y, or X is not having a lot of effect of Y on Y, right? So if that is how you would have used the regression coefficient in case of regression related technique. Okay, so these are how you have written the conclusion based on, in case of t-test, based on the t-value and degree of freedom. In case of regression, using the regression coefficient. In case of correlation, you would have used correlation coefficient. Based on that, you would have actually written your conclusion. Okay, so that's how you would have concluded. So so that is the those are the questions that are there. I would have covered most of the questions. Anything else which, yeah, what is operational definitions? Okay, so in methodology, there is a section called as operational definitions. Okay, so every project does have variables, which we talked about, right? In the sample project that we took, we talked about 3 variables, which is the body image and food habit, and the other one is the self esteem. Okay, these are the variables. Now, if you have seen in our textbook, every aspect has got multiple definitions. Example, intelligence. There are 100 scientists who would have given definitions for intelligence. So with slight modifications in the way that they would have told. Emotional coefficient. There would be hundreds of people who would have talked about what is emotional coefficient. Every scientist will have a different way of defining the emotional coefficient. Similarly, self-esteem, one of our variable, self-esteem here, would have had hundreds of definitions from people, right? Every scientist would have given a different definition for it. Operational definition is nothing but your chosen definition out of those hundreds which are available. So what you mean in your research as far as this variable is concerned. So this is like your chosen definition. So it's not that you are defining new thing, right? You are just choosing from one of those 100 definitions that are available, and you are saying that, okay, yeah, this is the one which fits perfect. This is exactly what I am trying to measure. That is what is operational definition. So for each variable, you would have chosen a definition saying that, yes, I meant, like body image means this is what I meant. Self-esteem means this is exactly what I meant. That is what is operational definition. Okay. So that is what you would have written in the operational definitions part. So this covers, I think, all the questions which are there, except very specific to the, I mean, your own variables part. For example, let's say the other questions, apart from whatever that I have covered, the other questions that could come is, so here in the sample study, we would have had self-esteem as one of the variable, right? The guy who is asking might actually ask, what is self-esteem? What do you think self-esteem is? Right? So they might ask the definition part of your variables. And in and around those definitions, they could have asked, if somebody is measuring intelligence, let's say, they might ask, okay, what is intelligence? And they might even ask saying that, okay, yes, how many types of intelligence do you think are there? So in and around questions of your variables might be the other very specific aspect of your project that they could ask. They can wander around your variables. So apart from that, you don't really have to randomly read through all the books. Okay, net to net methodology section is the most important section, and in and around variables are the ones which you need to actually remember. Nothing else as far as Viva is concerned. Okay. So if there are any other questions which are coming in general world, so the person who is asking would also be considerate enough, even if you don't actually answer it, they might not really get so much taken back. But if you answer this methodology part in a wrong way, then it is big negative for us. So make sure that you get the methodology right. Okay, so that's all as far as these questions are concerned. Anything else that we am missing, or
Can I
whether
ask a question, Praveen?
yes?
Okay, this parametric one, I understood. This non-parametric test, can you just give an example, even though I've used parametric, but I just want to understand a bit if you have the time.
Yes, definitely. Okay, as I said, there are number of aspects which come into picture to not qualify as, see, rather I will say that anything which doesn't qualify as parametric test falls under non-parametric. Okay. So for example, you are not able to collect sample of 30, then automatically it will fall under non-parametric test. Okay. So same research statement, everything is same, but your sample size is less. That
So
is
in
one
that
example.
case, you said the normal distribution curve will not come,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
how will it look like? That's what I'm not able to imagine.
See,
So it is not
in
normal.
certain cases,
Hmm.
yeah, in certain cases, let's say there is no chance of going negative. Okay. So the curve might really look saying that, okay, yes. Uh, so there is a U curve, right? So when you actually put the data would actually be in general, let's say you take height. So lot of people, it is very unlikely that height data.
Praveen, cost of tomato year will be correlation on a straight line.
So stitching needs to be done.
Going up, no?
That I will do.
Does that qualify?
So is it
Cost of
for
So,
Cost of vegetables and
So
as the year goes.
and
It will be
Correct,
increasing,
correct.
increasing, right?
or you'll be
Yeah, that
taking
would
that
be in the
applied?
normal distribution way. So basically what would happen is cost of vegetables would be like, it is very unlikely that the cost of vegetables actually goes almost like towards zero, right? So the end part of the tail would be like a very flat tail, which is going almost near to the zero kind of a thing, and it goes on. So on an average, it would actually remain, let's say, 30 rupees per kilo, which is going to be the highest as far as your year is concerned. And in the end, which is like a tomato going 300 rupees again is very, very unlikely. 300 rupees, 400 rupees, etc., etc. That unlikely part would again fall like a tail. So that is the normal distribution. Okay, so if there is any data which doesn't really fit into this normal curve, normal distribution curve, then it will form, it will follow the non-parametric ways of doing.
Got it. One more question. In this exclusion, you were saying about that English speaking thing, right? So in
Correct.
this thing, I have assumed, it was assumed that all our English speaking people were taking the test. So does that need to be really called out for? Because I did not do that.
Yeah, ideally speaking, we should have included in the exclusion criteria. So it is not like a assumption. It is like you are excluding people who are trying. So ideal place where you should actually put that particular thing is the exclusion. Okay, so you can probably think as something that you have missed in the exclusion criteria, but yes, ideally it is your exclusion criteria. You excluded thing.
Praveen, can you explain linear regression, please?
Okay, so linear regression is nothing but you are talking about, see, you have an X value, you have a Y value. Okay, X value is nothing but the input to your prediction of Y. Okay, so the way it is, what you are trying to do in case of regression is you are trying to predict Y based on your X value.
Okay.
Okay, using regression algorithm, you are predicting what is that equation. Am I just saying that 3x plus 5 equal to y? Or is it 0.3x plus y equal to y? So you are saying what should be the multiplicative factor on x plus what would be the constant that you add so that I can guess y.
Okay.
Okay, using regression algorithm, you are trying to check what is this multiplication factor. Should I multiply 0.3 to x or 3 to x or some 0.025 to x, etc., etc. That is regression coefficient. Okay. So using regression algorithm, you are finding out that multiplication factor and the constant that you are going to add. So imagine the multiplication factor is 0.0025.
Okay.
Multiplying x, then your regression coefficient is too small. That means the effect of x is like very, very less, right? On y. Okay. So that's how you would have actually done a lot of conclusions there in and around regression.
Okay.
So that is so linear. So there are various types of regressions.
Mm.
Linear regression is the simplest form of regression, where you are, as I said, the equation is y equal to mx plus c, right? So it is
Mm.
when you put up a graph, the line would be like a straight line. The relationship between x and y is like a straight line. That is what is the
Okay.
linear regression.
Linear
So,
regression. Okay.
so there are complex regressions as well, like logical regression and other stuff, where you are not assuming the straight line, rather you are assuming in various other forms of curves. And I don't think any of the projects would have used any of the other types of regression because it's more complex to use. So the simplest form of regression that is there is the linear regression. Okay, and linear regression is nothing but that particular straight line.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so using the coefficient and other things, you can actually check the strength of your relationship, and based on that, we would have done regression analysis and found this regression coefficient, that is slope, nothing but, and other things, and then based on that, we would have done the analysis in some cases.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So any other questions that we missed?
Actually, a few points which I just saw similar, which was asked, but it is individual, okay, for everyone. Like some things they have to, or we all have to read up is any other similar studies, maybe one or two, if it is done. Then limitations of the project, implications of our project, and factors that could impact our study. So somewhere I saw these 4 questions, which we
Okay,
have
so
to read up
basically,
on. Yeah.
yeah, basically, apart from the general conclusion that we would have written, right? So we would have actually gone through certain things, saying that what is the implication? Implication is nothing but how your study is going to matter to somebody, right? I did some study relating the effect of so and so, I mean, your food habits or the body image on the self-esteem. Now, how do I use this study? Where exactly this study I can actually put it in the action, right? So what is your study is implying? That is what is implication part. Okay. Limitations, right? Limitations are nothing but what you are not able to actually conclude. Example limitation: you used correlation technique to find correlation between the body image and the uh, uh, self-esteem. You found that there is a relation, there both are related. But what you wouldn't have found is, using correlation technique, you don't know the reason why exactly these two are related. What is that making them to relate? So there is implicit limitation on your thing, saying that you are not able to explain why. You just saying that both are related. Okay. So, but you don't know why they are related. So that is one of the limitations. So similarly, there are various limitations that you are, for example, you wouldn't have actually covered non-English speaking participant as a limitation of your study, right? You don't have a sufficient tool, hence you are not able to actually do. You wouldn't have covered certain parts of the culture. Maybe in some, some other culture, body image might not really affect the self-image. So you would have actually boxed your thing based on whatever that is available in and around surrounding of you. So that is another limitation. So these are like all limitations of your study. And the other section that you will have in your thing is suggestions for further research. So anything that you felt that something that you missed are the suggested, you can suggest saying that, okay, yes, my study doesn't cover these aspects. please somebody else cover it because I don't have time to do that. Right. So that is what is the suggestions for further research. That is again very specific to every topic, which you will find in one of the sections of your project. Just go through it. There would be only a couple of paras that would be covering.
That could actually come from the limitations itself, right?
Yes.
But maybe I can look at non-English also, cultures
Yes.
also.
Yes, limitations, and also based on your conclusion, you are not really, not able to find what is the relationship between body image and the self-esteem. So you are saying that somebody go and do the research why. I did not do the research on why part, so somebody can go and do the research on why, something like that. Right?
Praveen, see, when we say that the operational definition is somewhat related.
Operational definition is nothing but your chosen definition for the variable. Out of 100 definitions which are there on the net given by various scientists, what is your chosen definition for the variable in a very simple way? That is what is the operational definition means. So let's say you are measuring intelligence. What is intelligence is told by 100 scientists. But what is the most striking definition that you chose for your study? That is operational definition. You got what I'm trying to say? Is your question answered? Or
Yes, but will they ask about what is the author that you felt that this is the
no, not really. I don't think so.
And
I
what
don't
about
think
the
so.
scales? See, we used like X, B, ABC, some scales by somebody.
Right.
Right.
So
Would
they might
ask
ask what is the scale that you have used? Yes, they might ask.
Okay. And why? Will they ask why did you choose
No.
this scale?
No.
Because it was available for free.
You can tell that as well. Yes, this is the most available scale that I found.
We are students.
And
And
the guide suggested this particular scale. That is also a valid answer.
Yeah.
And also our sample size is just 60. We will not take like 100 questionnaire wala one scale.
Exactly.
Like three
Exactly.
scales, each 100 questions.
Yes, you have this scale which is available for free. Other scales are charging you to find the questionnaire, hence you are not able to afford. Okay, and your guide told that this is the best scale, and you also found that less number of questions, and it is easy to collect data. So all these are valid reasons why you would have chosen the scale. So there might not be any technical reason behind it.
Actually.
Yeah. Right. So yeah. So any other questions which is coming on top of the head?
Praveen, what is this SPSS?
Okay, SPSS is a statistical software. What it is just doing is, it is taking your data and giving the result. Basically, t-value, let's say you're trying to find. So there is a algorithm which we would have done during MPC 006, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 kind of a thing. So SPSS would automatically do those all steps and just say that, oh yeah, this is the t-value, this is the significance level, this is what is so-and-so in a table. And you just copy paste the table and then try to conclude by yourself based on t-value, based on significance level and all those stuff. So it is just a software which is going to solve your equation by and then give your result automatically. You put the data inside it, it will give you the solved equation.
Oh, Praveen,
Okay.
is it
Okay, so in case they ask us, sorry,
In case they ask you,
how you got the answer, can we say like we entered it in SPSS software?
yes, you can even say that I don't have SPSS software, hence I took
My
help
guide
of
did.
guide. Also is okay because SPSS software is not
It's a license.
easily available. It is a licensed software, and it
Yeah,
is
my
no big
guide
deal
only
in using this SPSS software, by the way.
So we can say
Okay.
that the guide gave us the information or helped us in this. Is that okay to
Yes,
say?
you can say that. You can say that. Okay,
we can
absolutely.
say like we
So
shared
in case
data
if
with
you
our
want to,
guide.
yes, in case if you want to give any alternate software names which are available free, the other ways to actually see, we used SPSS to do it, and SPSS is not available to everybody. You will have to take help from the people who does have license. So you can definitely say that my guide really to inputted in the SPSS and then gave the this table, and this table is something that I have concluded. Okay, so it is absolutely fine. You don't really have to say that I have a SPSS software, I myself ran it. Okay, so there are other ways to do it other than SPSS as well, which are free and available on the internet. The software called as, there is a software called as PSPP. Okay, it is exactly similar to SPSS, which is free and available on internet. You can download, input your data, it will give you the results. In case if somebody is very, very interested to know how SPSS works and they don't have license, they can download it and test it by yourself. Okay, before
What
the
is the
Viva. But this is very, very unlikely that people will really ask all these things. Very, very unlikely. I'm just telling on the remote possibility in terms of if somebody wants to really experience how it works, they can do that. Okay, PSPP is the software name, which is freely available. You can download, and this behaves exactly similar like SPSS. So you will get a feel of how SPSS really works. Okay, but it is not a big deal. I don't think you really require to go through all this exercise. It is just a tool software. You put the data into it and it will give you the result, saying that, oh, you give the data and say run t-test, it will run t-test and give the result out of it. So it is no big deal. So this software, running this software is not like a holy grail that everybody needs to learn kind of a thing. You should learn how to interpret the result that it gives. Okay, that part you definitely will have to learn. It gave t value as so and so, but what it means to your research is something that you will definitely have to learn. Okay, but don't worry, they will not really ask how SPSS really work, and you don't really have to say that I ran SPSS, because everybody knows SPSS is a licensed software and the license cost is very high. You can't really procure as a student and then just for one project and then run. Okay, it is commercially not viable to procure license just for this small project and run it. So none of us would have actually procured the license. So the person who is asking will not expect that you will have license as well.
Praveen, related to what you just told, right? I
Yes.
asked my guide, okay, the question that
Yeah.
she just gave some p-value, that table, right? And she
Yes.
told, ma'am, this is significant, so you accordingly interpret. So
Yes.
I asked her, how you know it is significant? Okay,
Yes. Hey,
is there some
1 minute
minimum
before,
value?
1 minute before you further going into it,
Yeah.
do we want to stop recording at this stage?
Yeah, we can if we are done.
Yeah, just stop
I
the
think now
recording.
doubt solving only.
No, because doubts might actually go into your specific topic and specific guide.